So I'll record it so we have. So good morning and Shabbat Shalom again. I'm very excited and pleased to welcome here Rabbi Alona Lisitsa, my teacher from my days in the Hebrew Union College. Rabbi Alona is a professor at the Hebrew Union College in Yerushalayim, in Jerusalem, and is also the editor or co-editor of the new Israeli Reform Shulchan Aruch, which just came out and is being printed. I hope now as we speak or soon will be printed. Bezrat Hashem, in the following weeks and months. But it's a beautiful, beautiful Siddur, and I even used part of the Modani from your Siddur today, so thank you. Rabbi Alona is also rabbi sometimes rabbi, I'm not exactly sure, but in communities in Spain and South America. We had a few very interesting discussions about Batei Din and conversions in different places, and has agreed to come and speak with us today about her article on Is a Reform Shulchan Aruch possible? And I love that title, and we'll go into discussion. So please, Rabbi Alona, if you want to add a few things about yourself, and then you just lead the way, and we will let you speak for a while, and then at some point let us know when we can open it up to questions and discussions. And people are welcome to put questions also in the chat.
Shalom, everybody. It's a very nice opportunity to meet one of our Canadian counterparts, and I'm very glad. I was very glad to accept Rabbi's invitation. And maybe what's really important is to add to our new Siddur is that Rabbi's Gila can blessings and poetry is inside too. So you all share some parts with our Siddur, so just to make you even more proud of that joint venture. I will try to show my screen with you. Just let me know if you see. Does it work? Do you see it? Give me a sign if you see it. Yeah, good. So the question about this Shulchan Aruch came from kind of a personal and social experience. Something else I would like you to know that my field of research is ancient halacha, so I'm dealing with really old stuff, not very. I do think it has a direct connection with our modern life, but I'm researching very old halacha, and I'm trying to see how from what we have in the Torah we got to have something in the Talmud, and the material, how does this material change on the way from the Torah to the Talmudim? So in Israeli society, and you're welcome to think if it's anything of parallel in your everyday life, in very heated discussions between Reform Jews and our Orthodox brothers and sisters, something like that would come in a context. What do you have to do with Judaism? What do you have to do with halacha? And this kind of question is usually a rhetorical question. It means to diminish us as Reform Jews and to put us aside. And what it means, like, if we don't have anything to do with halacha, which is it's kind of a presupposition of that discussion, it means that you have nothing to do with Judaism at all. And then also the following would be kind of a basic concept of the discussion is that, and people many times would say that to us, you don't follow Shulchan Aruch. So who are you? Who are you to talk? Who are you to claim being Jewish if you don't follow Shulchan Aruch? And in that kind of sentence, Shulchan Aruch actually stands for halakha in general. So halakha is the most important, or actually is equivalent to Judaism and to Shulchan Aruch. And I wanted to explore this question, to take it seriously, because usually, when we have these heated discussions, it's not really serious. It's not really about listening to each other. It's more of like, you blame me, I blame you. And I try to reduce my participation in that kind of discussion. So while alone in the library, I try to look at that question kind of in a more serious way. And I invite you also, you can also look at my article and see it in more details, but I will kind of show you how I will invite you to follow my thoughts during the writing of that article, and the questions I've raised, what was important to me, and I invite you to think for yourself if it resonates somewhere with your thinking of your place as Jews among the Jewish people, being Reformed Jew inside the people of Israel, which includes definitely all kinds of Jews, not only Reformed Jews. So talking about Shulchan Aruch, I've asked the question, first of all, let's talk about historical Shulchan Aruch. So as you probably all know, it was written by Rabbi Yosef ben Ephraim Karo, and you can see that this important rabbi, he was born in Toledo in Spain, and look at the date actually is talking. So you can understand that he hadn't spent much time of his life in Spain. As a child with his family, they were expelled from Spain during that famous inquisitional expulsion of Jews from Spain. The family moved to Portugal, and then they were forced to move further. So they lived around between like Turkish border today, and finally they moved to Sfat in Eretz Israel. In those days, Eretz Israel is part of Ottoman Empire. And here on our slides, you can see 4 of his very important books. I would say that Shulchan Aruch would probably stand out as the most famous. But I do want us to stop for a minute and talk about the other books, even if they're less known, because I think it's important for our discussion of Halakha and Shulchan Aruch, also in a Reform context. The first 2 books he wrote, Beit Yosef, the house of Yosef, because he's Yosef, so it's kind of it was a tradition that rabbis took their names and introduced their names into the names of their major compilations. And the second book is Kesef Mishneh. Both books, as a genre, they are kind of a commentary compilation that are following into a footprint of 2 other important books, and you see it also on the slide. Beit Yosef followed a very important book by Rabbi Yaakov ben Asher, which is called Arba Torim, 4 columns. And Kesef Mishneh is actually kind of interpretation of Rambam's Mishneh Torah. And why it's important for us? It's important for us because these 2 books, commentated by Yosef Karo, Arba Torim and Mishneh Torah, represent 2 major different styles in writing halakha. So actually, since the 13th century, since Shulchan Aruch, since Arba Torim, most of the halachic compilations would follow this division into 4 parts. Rabbi Yosef ben Asher created that division, thematic division. The first column follows the daily halakha, daily life. The second one follows the criminal law, another the family law, and another the laws of prohibitions and what's permitted, what's prohibited. So even today, if you open a book of halakha created in modern days, you can look at the same paragraphs and the same numbers of the paragraphs, the same numbers of the chapters, the same division. So he created something really big, really important, and really influential. And Rabbi Yosef Karo follows. He follows and he comments on Arbat Urim, creating his Beit Yosef. The style of this book is to present for us a short summary, a short review of the Talmud, taking out all the stories, all the morals, all the kind of theoretical discussions, but to limit ourselves to practical halakhic issues. Rambam, with his Mishneh Torah, has created much of debate, and many people actually, many very important rabbis really criticized him for that. Rambam didn't bring any discussion. He didn't even cite the names of the rabbis who ruled this halacha. Mishneh Torah is actually the book of bottom lines. Just, very, very short lines. You do this, you don't do that. And even the name, Mishneh Torah, second to the Torah. Just think about the arrogance of that name. You need the Torah and you need my book, and that's it. So we are done. You just have the two and you know how to be in it. And why it's important because to think about Rabbi Yosef Karo as a great scholar who was able to write in both styles, who was able to comment in both styles, and not only limiting himself to criticizing others, but being able to create something broad and important and follow all the styles. The last book, Magid Meisharim, brings us to a very important part, which is overlooked many times, but it's really, really important to understand, for understanding Rabbi Karo's halakhic ruling. Rabbi Karo was a Kabbalist. He was practicing mystic, not only studying Zohar, but actually practicing the secrets. And his book, Magid Meisharim, is kind of representing for those who are inside the secret, all these mystical, let's say some of his mystical experiences. And why it's important for us in this discussion, because his halacha is heavily influenced by this, by his being a mystic, by his being so involved in the Kabbalah. So all this modern days thinking, which is quite of a stereotypical, the academic and the mystical, the halacha and the law and the spiritual, it's not actually true. It's not actually true. I don't believe it's true for our days. It's kind of a very exaggerated division, but it was definitely not true for Rabbi Yosef Karo. So from that background, I want to come to Shulchan Aruch, which is the third number here in the list. He wrote Shulchan Aruch not as a commentary to Mishneh Torah or Rambam, but as a compilation, which is almost like Mishneh Torah. The book of bottom lines, the book of short halacha. And now we'll try to understand why somebody would need to write another book. Like, yes, time has passed. Rambam wrote this book in 12th century. Rabbi Karo lives in 16th century. But if we have a book of bottom lines, right? And he himself has already created his Beit Yosef, the House of Yosef, book of really longer discussion about the halacha, providing some rationale for each halacha and sources. Why would he need to write something like Shulchan Aruch, the book of bottom lines? And even more so, we read in his introduction to Shulchan Aruch what he has to say about Beit Yosef, about his So first of all, he thinks that Beit Yosef is a great compilation. So for Rabbi Karo, not Shulchan Aruch, but Beit Yosef is his greatest book, quite contrary from what we know today. Most people will say, Shulchan Aruch, yeah, that's the most important thing. It was not so in the perspective of Rabbi Karo. And his understanding was that, first of all, that book, Beit Yosef, not only includes all the laws and from all halachic authorities, from all the new and all the details from all the halachic compilations in his books, he represents all that with the detail of the authors. So he says that halacha comes from Talmud, and where you can find it. That halacha comes from another rabbinic compilation. That's something that one rabbi said. That's something that other rabbis said. So everything is provided for you if you're not only interested in a short answer, but you want to understand why. What is the reason? So he is really proud of his book, Beit Yosef, but he continues and he says that he kind of came to an understanding that it might be also good to have a brief book for reference. That all the halacha would be very clear, very short, and very accessible. And look what kind of example he gives of that accessibility, of providing an opportunity for the sages, for the rabbis, to give you a very quick answer. He says that when somebody asks a wise student, he means Talmid Chacham, a rabbi, somebody comes with a halachic question, symbolically, that rabbi can say to wisdom, you are my sister. Why you are my sister? Because according to the Jewish law, it's very simple that men are prohibited to have physical relationship with his sister. So the same way, the answer for any question, for any practical halacha would be very clear to that rabbi. So the rabbi would be able to get an answer on spot. So a very different purpose. This is not a book for studying, that's a book for giving answers. And even to make it even easier, the book is divided into 30 parts. And if you learn each day one part and then you repeat and you repeat, you almost know it by heart. Every month you finish repeating the book, so you are really an expert, and it comes like in a moment you can give an answer. Okay. But I still want to ask a question: why? Why do we need all that? Why Rabbi Yosef Karo thought he needs it? So wait, wrong direction. Okay. So first of all, quantity and diversity. Many halachot are created all the time. New situation, new answers, new challenges. You need to provide new answers. And diversity. Jewish diaspora spreads to many different places, many different countries, and you need to accommodate to the life in that place. So it's also diversity of the realities in which Jews lived. Political and economic and social reality. Jews live in a very, very different situation from what we know today. They are persecuted. They are expulsed from the place where they used to live for ages, or for long enough time for the children to not remember a different place, or even for elders. Jews are not only second-class citizens, they are citizens without rights. They are protected by kings. They are not allowed to practice any profession they want. They are actually, in many sense, they are black. They are black in a modern sense because they've seen physically different, Their appearance is physically different, very recognizable. They're people of color. And on the top of that, they are asked to dress and to do certain things that would differentiate them even more. When they're expulsed, when they move places, when they forcibly need to join a Jewish congregation in a different place, they meet different traditions, which may be very, very different from what they know, and they need to accommodate. And that traditional society feels the need to harmonize, to reach unification, to reduce diversity, and to create unity. That is understood as something ideal. So there are no contradictions. Everything is explained, and we all do the same. That kind of peace, like when peaceful existence is rather confirmed existence. And the last is immediate halachic ruling. Sometimes people need an immediate question. And why would people need an immediate question? It's because we need to practice our Judaism in a correct way. And in the case of Shulchan Aruch, it's even more. It's even more because all we said previously was right for any halachic authors. Before Rabbi Yosef Karo, after Rabbi Yosef Karo, all of them, but in his time, as a person who lived the expulsion from Spain, this political reality, social reality was quite vivid. And his family and his generation they have met a huge diversity moving from one country and the other. And you just need to understand that the Spanish community is a loud and proud, very educated, coming from the golden age of Jewish poetry, mysticism, study, writing, everything. And these people go all kind of places and find all kind of Jews who do all kind of things. What kind of Judaism do they practice? Well, we know from home that it should be it should be what we do. So they are living this conflict very, very acute. And everybody actually believes that there should be, that there is a correct identity. We need to preserve the correct Judaism. There is one correct Judaism. So that's the place of Rabbi Yosef Karo and his Shulchan Aruch. And in general, all this writing is so important and so urgent because their perception is the Torah is the word of God. It's divine law. It's divine will, and it's all-encompassing. Halacha is not something most of Jews, even Orthodox Jews today, accept as something religious. Halacha, Jewish law, deals with criminal law, with every moment of your life. There is nothing which is empty of halacha. Halacha is everywhere because it's divine law and you need to live it. So when today the majority of Jews would ask maybe a rabbi about kashrut and the prayer, or maybe about holidays. But if there is an issue of property, of money, they have the legal system of the country they live in. In medieval, through the Jewish history, in most cases they would have internal autonomous legislation, which is halachic. So halacha, it's not a religious law, it's not a ceremonial law, it's a law of life. Whatever you do is regulated. And the feeling that it should be preserved and safeguarded because we are moving, because there's so much of that material and internal understanding that that's important. That's what we need to live to be Jewish. It's our commitment. It's our fulfillment. That's how we live according to the divine will. That's how we live about how we live our Torah in life, and the importance to do it right. The importance to serve your God life, to live your Judaism in practice. That was really something in earth. It's true that there were always more religious people or less religious people, but these things on our slide were perceived as something like axioma. It was not something you need to prove. So now I would like us to see how it's different within the Reform movement. But before that, I would like you to give an example of how is halakha encompassed, and just one tiny example. That's how the Shulchan Aruch starts. I don't know what you think when you read this line. Isn't it poetry? Does it look to you like a dry law? To me, it's really like a poetry. That's human life. It's so difficult to get up early. I don't know. I definitely identify myself with that. It's tremendously difficult to get up early. And it's tremendously difficult to start, worship your creator. I don't know who I am in the morning. And then he says, you start doing it, and what you do is actually start the work of creation. You, by making yourself strong like a lion and serving your God and starting your prayer, you put in work the work of creation. You're making the dawn. I don't know. For me, it's just beautiful, just poetry. And Shulchan Aruch is full of very interesting mystical influence and poetic insertions. And that's just one example.
Rabbi Alona, I just have, could we just pause here for a moment? Because
wherever you want.
Yeah, I do see there are some questions in the chat, and perhaps if people would like to ask some clarification or explanations about what you've been talking about up till now, this might be a good moment to stop for a moment and ask questions.
But Robert, would you like to present your question, or would you like me to read that? So what I see here is the following. Robert says, my concern is less with ritual matters and more with lifestyle, particularly economic matters. My feelings about cause of behavior are mixed, but without any strong community norms, we are left at the mercy, so to speak, of those of the dominant culture. And as we are seeing, this culture has become bluntly destructive, murderous, in fact, clearly contrary to the heart of Torah. Let's take the prototypical personal decision, what career to pursue, how to earn a living. We're extremely reluctant to trespass on such a core area of personal sovereignty. And yet, this personal choice has a profound impact on wider society. Here in Alberta, I hope I say it right, many of us work, until recently anyway, in tar sands extraction, directly or indirectly, and these career decisions aggregated over the population result in economic activity that is destroying biodiversity on which human life depends, and feeding a financial system that concentrates wealth and power in the hands of fewer and fewer people. I don't mean to single out the energy sector workers. We are all, to great or lesser extent, feeding the capitalism beast. What if Jews and other people of life who firm faith traditions had a strong collective countercultural behavioral norm, a halakha, that led us to building alternative economic institutions, such as workers' cooperatives that increase social equality instead of concentrating wealth that build biodiversity rather than depleting it. It's a great question. I would say definitely yes. I would say the following: Jewish perspective on career is definitely traditional perspective. Is different for men and women, which is something the reform movement I assume we need to think about and to in my opinion to make it egalitarian. On the other hand, Jewish tradition holds it that a person should work to make a living, not to make riches. So ideally, from traditional perspective, you work as much as you need to get your house and to get something to eat for yourself and your family, and to get dressed, just the minimal, because most of your time should be study of Torah. That's the ideal. A Jew is supposed to fill your life with the study of Torah. Now, we can take that perspective and think how, as a modern reform community, we want to translate it. How is that study of Torah in a practical form could fill our life, and how to make it our binding, our practice of commitment, not only just a beautiful statement that rabbi passes or the leadership of congregation passes between and publish on the website, but something will live through. So I absolutely agree that questions like that should be brought to the table and discussed in a manner that that leads to creating norms. Halacha is law. Halacha is a norm, and yes, I would love to see us as the reform movement of different congregations creating something like that. Robert, you are not. You're really not. You're welcome. Do we have any questions or clarifications by now? So I will continue, and I follow you. I will stop at different places. So I'll invite you to. So this is we kind of we made a short way of what's traditional, or what was the motivation, and what was pushing Rabbi Yosef Karo to create his Shulchan Aruch, and a little bit of it. If we have any questions about that, so that's probably the moment to ask. Not we can continue with the reform movement, and then open to broader discussion. Okay. So reform movement as a movement that was born in Germany in 19th century, actually inherits a very different situation from the situation of the generations before, and definitely very different from the situation of Rabbi Yosef Karo. But what was really interesting, that not only we Reform Jews live in this different situation, all the Jews live in this different reality, in this different world. And I've paid attention that in among the Orthodox, or let's say traditional world and then Orthodox world, many other compilations, which are like Shulchan Aruch, were written and still are written till today. They change form, and I will talk about a little bit about how they change form. Within the Reform movement, no book like Shulchan Aruch was ever written. There were some examples, and you can see I'm talking about a couple of examples like that in my article, but not something that big and that authoritative. No book of bottom lines, how to practice, how to be a Jew was written inside the movement. And I wanted to ask a question: why? Why don't we write anything like that? And here I try to put before you some answers. So first of all, Reform movement started as, or even before, Reform movement as any revolutionary movement from the very beginning tried to present itself. Oh, no, we are not revolutionary. We just continue the tradition before us. So any revolution is very apologetic in a sense. So the fathers of Reform movement, and they were male in their majority, or all of them were male, not only majority, most of all of them. They've been involved in a very intense discussion with halacha and with tradition, which was in an apologetic discussion. And they used to say, and it's something that you can hear us saying even today, that, oh, Judaism always was reform. Judaism was developing, reforming itself, changing, and then came Shulchan Aruch and led to stagnation. So in the reform thinking from the very beginning, this book, that type of literature like Shulchan Aruch, the book of short, you do that, you don't do that, was associated with stagnation of Judaism. The movement started developing after the French Revolution and in the period of Enlightenment. So Jews didn't suffer that much of persecutions, expulsions, and even better, Jews got civil rights. They were allowed to study in the universities, and the social atmosphere changed. More and more Jews would have real good, gentle friends, which is something like maybe today we understand it as something like very normal. It wasn't. Jews were living in ghettos. Jews were living in very close societies. The only non-Jewish people they normally met, they were people they did business with. Sometimes, yes, they were friends. But here something changing because Jews are more accepted in outside society. They are more exposed to outside society, and that society is friendly in a sense. They are not demanding Jews to baptize themselves in order to be accepted. You can continue to be Jewish, or you can be even non-religious at all. It's a very different social climate. And with the immigration of Reform Judaism to America, many Jews felt that, oh, that's Olam Haba. This is the world to come. We are equal. State and religion are separated. You can practice anything. Look, in the United States, what started historically, the actual flourishing of all these Christian denominations that were forbidden or suffered persecutions in traditional Europe. But that's also true for Jews. I don't want to say that there was or there is no anti-Semitism. That for sure exists, but it's a very different thing from what experienced Jews in the medieval Europe and even before. At least on the paper, Jews have the same civil rights. They can raise the voice. So it's a very different climate. We're living now in a time of print and press. To preserve the Torah is easier. We are not so pressed and worried that we are losing it. You can print it very cheaply. You can print all the halachot. The job of compilating the material and publishing it and making it accessible to people is easier, much easier. Also, that 19th century is a period of creating of Jewish academia, yeshivot, board, high academies of Jewish study. That's the time when you can study Jewish matters using newly developed critical approaches. And another thing which is very important for the modern reform movement, maybe less at its beginning, but today for sure, it's the perspective that diversity is a blessing. It's not a curse. It's not something you should fight with, but we can all enjoy it. So you can see actually that most of the things that led halachic authorities and Rabbi Yosef Karo including to the feeling that urgent pressing need to put in writing to make it very very rapid and accessible. All these circumstances, or most of that circumstances, are not really, they don't exist anymore. At least in the perspective of the Reform Jews, we don't live in a state of mind that we are persecuted and our Torah is in danger and we need to save it. We have libraries, we have scholars. Everything is written. Judaism is accessible online. That present need to save God is not existent anymore. And on the other hand, that pressure to harmonize, to make everybody do the same, is less and less it doesn't influence our life that much. We do look at diversity as a wonderful thing. And I would like you to see that citation. I took it from the book of Rabbi Mark Warshawski, one of the halachic authorities, I would say, of the Reform movement in the United States. Rabbi Warshawski was a head of responser committee of HUC-JIR, Central Conference of American Rabbis, for many years. He is one of the greatest researchers of halakha. And he actually said that diversity, this is the word that describes us today. So we do make decisions, we do have practices, but we decided for ourselves, and the decisions of one person doesn't bind the other person, and the decisions of one congregation is not something that bind the other congregation, and we do not know the communities, know the rabbis. We don't try to enforce uniformity. Saying that, it doesn't mean we don't encourage commitment, or we don't encourage learning and taking upon yourself all kind of Jewish commitments. So that citation was actually taken from the book where Rabbi Warshawski tried to, he called it, I think, a contemporary guide to contemporary Judaism or something like that. And that's an attempt actually to write a Shulchan Aruch, but in a very different form. So, as I said, uniformity is no longer seen as something ideal. It's not something we aspire to. Authority has given way to personal and community autonomy. It's not that here is the great rabbi, he decided and we all have to do what he decided because he's such a learned scholar, such a great rabbi, and such a famous, such an important person. I think our rabbis, and I don't think in other religions it exists either. So authority is less important, and personal autonomy and autonomy of community is more and more important. And something different also comes into place is that we put more emphasis on learning and on halachic decision making than on a quick ruling. I would say that from my rabbinic experience, I used to be a congregational rabbi in Kibbutz Yahel, and I work with the congregations in Spain and Portugal. So in my experience, the only moments when people do really want from us quick halachic answer is connected to death, funeral, because something should be done rather quickly. In the majority of other opportunities, when people want to know something or want to decide how to act, we encourage a long, in-depth study and individual commitment. So you can't do it with that style of Shulchan Aruch when you already have an answer. You need something like Beit Yosef, or we need responsa. And responsa is a rabbinic genre which has developed, we have kind of responses already in the Talmudim, but it's really developed in the very early medieval times 7th, 8th century in Babylonia. But when you have a question, you write to a famous rabbi and he gives you an answer. But that answer normally is not yes or no, do that, this, don't do this. Normally, the rabbis would show you how they reached that decision. They will provide you the sources, the explanation, and the closer we are coming to our days, to our modern days, the responser become more longer and longer, because the rabbis really use it as an educational form. It's really wherever you and it's very, very interesting that in the Reform movement, this genre is a highlight. We have tons of Reform responses because people are not really seeking to receive that short rabbinic psak, the short rabbinic decision. They want to understand why. They want to make their own commitment. So that genre is kind of more. It fits more our times and our desires, and also in our times, halakha and Judaism is more about religious law, because the other type of law is under the government of the state you live in. So we do we can take an example of what Asher said, like, you know, applying our Jewish values and become proactive. But our activism inspired by Torah and halakha values would not would address the establishment, which is a secular establishment of the state. It won't be only something internal in the community. Sometimes maybe yes. So you can see that the responser is really a highlight in our movement. We have many journals, we have many responses online, and in the majority of cases, when people come to rabbis to ask a question or to learn, they expect learning. They expect that we sit down, we open the sources, read, and then they want to decide themselves. Yes, there are some situations when they would prefer rabbis to take the responsibility of the decisions, but not many. So I would give you also, I think that change is not only something that we experience in the Reform movement, it's a general change in the world. Because if we even talk about the Orthodox society, I would give you an example of a very important halakhic book today, which is called Pninei Halacha, the Pearls of Halacha, written by Rav Melamed, who is a very important rabbi. He's kind of national religious, maybe on the board of a little bit Haredi. Very important rabbi, very important book. And he writes, it's kind of like Shulchan Aruch, but he does explain. He explains much more than Shulchan Aruch, because even inside Orthodoxy, people don't want to get an answer yes, no. They want to understand why. What's the reason? And he gives in that book, oh, that's Ashkenazi tradition and that's Sephardic tradition, in both are good, which is kind of surprising because Rabbi Yosef Karo wrote his Shulchan Aruch on Sephardic tradition. Other rabbis wrote commentaries for Ashkenazim. Rabbi Melamed puts everything inside his book, and he said that both are good and legitimate. You are to choose. And we do have more mixed families, so the decision is a joint decision. So even inside the Orthodox, you see the change, that people are less and less interested in yes and no. They want to know why. So that's why for us, I think it's a great question. And here I would like to invite you to fill in. Is it a commitment? Something, so commitment to what? To what we want to be committed? To whom? Is it continuity? Is it our togetherness as a congregation, as people? Is it our desire to continue to practice everyday Jewishness and not Jewishness of the synagogue of Kabbalat Shabbat and then continue business as usual? What are these things we want to define as important for our continued conversation with Halacha? And if we want to continue our discussion with Halacha, my perspective as somebody who wrote this article is that that discussion is very important. Judaism Judaism is not equal to Halacha, but Halacha is such a major and important part of Judaism that taking it out, in my perspective, we are losing much of our heritage, and I feel like I don't want to. But that's why I think that calls for discussion, and that's why it's something that each person individually and each congregation needs to decide. What is the place of Halacha? What is the place of our own Shulchan Aruch, of our congregation, or my personal Shulchan Aruch, metaphorically speaking? And what's my commitment and why I do that? So I think I'll stop here, and I invite you to share your opinions.
Okay. Thank you, Rabbi Alona. Toda rabba. That was a lot of information to take in. I want to, if I can ask a question, and then people can also think and bring into themselves a question that I find, and I'm kind of, because you started answering it, but why do you think we should continue and develop a reform halachic discussion? Like, where do you see that we would be beyond it being part of Judaism? Okay, you know, why do you think that specifically halacha and the tool of halacha should continue being part of our Jewishness? Because that's what I'm understanding that you're saying. And what would we lose as Reform Jews if we didn't develop this tool from, I would say, from within a Reform perspective? And yeah, I'll stop there for a moment with a question.
I think, and it's like what I answer now, it's not something official, but it's a personal opinion. I think that Judaism is a religion of action. It's not something you just say and live it on a theoretical, philosophical level. That's why actually halacha is so important to our people, to our culture, to our religion, to our people, is because halacha is a translation of these ideas. For generations, people join Jewish people either by being born inside or joining, not by proclamation, but but joining the lifestyle. You do what Jews do, and then you are part of that mishpucha. So that's why I think that discussion is important. Discuss, what do we do? So we have all these nice values, we all these nice books, we have all these nice ideas. Time changes all the time. How we continue practicing Jewish values, how we continue to be Jewish, on the top of being born or being converted. So how it continues, how do you live it? So for me, living Judaism is very important. It's not something I want to live on a theoretical level. So I think that halacha, that's the traditional tool to make it very practical to discuss. So, for example, if we say that God had created the world and put that world in our hands and we are responsible for that world, so how we keep it, So what should be done? So it's not only preaching, it's some kind of action. So that should be halacha, that should be a law. It's a Jewish word. So halacha, actually in Hebrew, it comes from going, from lalechet, moving. So how do we move with these principles, with this law? How we practice it? So if we say that life is important, life of human beings is sacred. So what do we do to make that really happen? How do we treat the neighbor? How do we treat each other? How we treat ourselves, our bodies, and our souls? That it's sacred. So I think that's a discussion. Yes, the traditional Shulchan Aruch comes into every tiny corner of your life. How do you tie your shoelaces? And also, how do you pray and whatever. And if we think about our everyday lives, each of us has a routine. Each one of us would do things in a certain way. So I think halacha is a traditional tool which allows us maybe to rethink and say, okay, well, things I do I do my things, do I do my routine in a Jewish way or not? Do I want to make them Jewish? Do I want to separate fields, something Jewish, something not? What makes my actions Jewish actions? So I think that's, for me, it's an important discussion. I do want to live my Judaism on a minute basis. So for me, it's urgent. But I understand that people vary. And I think that could be different perspectives and different directions to go.
Do you see a difference between the conversation about halacha in the Israeli Reform movement versus the North American movement or the European Reform movement? Like, is there a different type of discussion or relationship with halacha, like with the concept of halacha?
I think that it's an interesting question. It would be really difficult for me to answer, Gila, because I know that discussion from the rabbis. I don't know that discussion from real life people. And the rabbi is always a different kind of people. They live in their bubbles and they discuss their discussions. I don't have a sense how it resonates for the life of Northern American congregations, for people in the congregations, what's important. I can tell you, people I work with in Spain and Portugal, that discussion is very important because, first of all, there are many converts. There are many Bnei Anusim. There are many traditions. People discovering their Judaism. They're coming to live Judaism, and differently from the United States, European social climate used to be rather anti-Semitic. It's something which is present. The Catholic Church is even if it's not something governmental, but the general culture is very Catholic, very anti-Semitic. And their discussion of halacha is really to frame the congregational life because they can practice their Judaism inside the building mainly, or inside the home. So it's not so much outside, and that's why it's really urgent and important because their Judaism is limited to these two spaces, not so much outside, and they want to fulfill it. So they're looking for many ways how to fulfill it because there are only two opportunities normally. So in that sense, that's a very important discussion for them, how to do it right, how to do more. So yes, in Israel, I think there's so much tension between the Orthodox monopoly and all the rest that I don't think that people, I would say people many times mix talking about halacha and mix talking about Jewish way of life with that sense of coercion they feel, which is true. But and it's very difficult to separate. I understand it, but I would say it's important. It's important to I think I feel Judaism as a commitment, as something that is upon me. So for me it's important, but I'm not sure all the Jews are on the same page about that issue.
I see there's a comment here from Paula. Paula, would you like to say something on your comment? Please.
I just found it very interesting that you said that there's only two opportunities for European Jews, either the synagogue or home. And I think for every Jew, we choose to be Jewish, and first and foremost, we reflect that in our home, how we raise our children, how we feed our children, how we treat our significant others, how we interact with our parents, regardless of how difficult that is, how we frame conflict. I think Judaism, for me, is always based and starts at home, how we welcome people to our home, who we allow in our home, what we allow in our home, what behaviors are okay or not okay. So I'm not sure that that's any different, at least for me, from a North American perspective, than it might be for anybody anywhere else. I mean, my daughter, who lives in Tel Aviv, tells me she has a whole bunch of friends who are kippah in the pocket Jews. So they come from certain homes, and when they're at home, on goes the kippah, and when they're not at home, off goes the kippah. So I found that interesting. I think whether you wear a kippah or you don't wear a kippah, or in our shul, whether you wear a talit or you don't, or whether you wear a kippah or you don't, doesn't necessarily, the trappings don't necessarily reflect the commitment. There's other reasons why people choose to wear one or not. But I think how we conduct ourselves at home is what matters.
Well, I absolutely agree with you. I would only want to add to that home being so important. And maybe I live also in a bubble about North American reality. And you're welcome to correct me. But I would suggest that wearing kippah or not wearing kippah, or wearing talit or not wearing talit, it's a personal choice. It's very different from not being able to put kippah on the street because it would lead to a very unpleasant interactions. So in Spain and in Portugal, people are afraid to get out with the kippah or talit outside. It's not because they, it's an informed Reform choice why I would not. It's because they cannot. And in that sense, it's very different. That's one part of the thing I would comment on what you said. And maybe you do live through different periods when, certain parts of the city are not safe in that sense. And in certain times of, you all experience that, changes in your society. It's not only in Spain and Portugal, it's in many places. And in Israel, you can say the same about women. If a woman would appear with kippah and talit on the street, that would be part, and women are secretly practicing their religious objects inside the children, inside home. So it's a complex thing, but it's different from the choice. Another comment I would to follow your comment as home being so important and so formative, in my perspective, also might or even should lead to the way I act as a Jew outside. Like Halacha touches, how do you do your business partnerships? How do you treat the consumer, the buyer, how do you, at every corner of your life. That's something I would be interested to explore for myself, for my children, for my community. How do we exit our houses, exit our synagogues, and move through the general society, move through life, living the values, making them practice, transforming them into Jewish practice. So thinking about thinking about Judaism not only as rituals and prayer, but living it in terms, like you said, what are the rules at home? So what are the rules outside home? How do you behave with people outside? How do you treat people? When do you raise your voice to defend something which is our value or not our, like things like that. That's something I would be really interested if it happens, and so expand the discussion beyond the ritual. We have some comments, I think.
Yeah, Judith has a question here. I'll just pick something out of the question, and then Judith, if you want to expand, if I didn't choose the right bit, tell me. But can you provide an example of a time when you as a rabbi have wished there was a Reform Shulchan Aruch to use, not necessarily to advise you about practice, but to help you advise others you are working with? It goes back to the question of when would we, or how do you imagine us needing, or where would a Reform Shulchan Aruch actually benefit us? I think, if I'm understanding Judith's question correctly.
So I look at any writing, Shulchan Aruch, or as an opportunity to learn, an opportunity to study. So I don't think we need, or we are looking for, something that is simple yes or no. We are looking for something that can facilitate us to understand our tradition better and to be able to make our own decisions, or our collective decisions as a congregation, as a group of people. So I think that the compilation that gives you perspective on different halachic issues, that are life-to-life issues, work ethic, agreements, relationships with non-Jews, relationships with converts. How do we treat converts and how we should treat converts? That kind of issues that I think that it would be good to see some works dealing with that. And I need to say that I do think that we have many. My problem, and if you look through my article, it's not that I'm saying, oh, we don't have Shulchan Aruch and how bad is it. I'm saying that we are we are suffering from a phenomenon. We are afraid to interfere. We are afraid to like, who am I to tell you, and all that kind of a narrative, which is very important. I don't want to say, like, you know, that the rabbi or we are inside the community should interfere each other's personal life very freely upon our decision. But what I'm saying is different. I think that we are not providing enough study and enough materials for those who do want to study. So I'll give an example. If you are interested to explore tefillin, okay? I don't know how did you come to that, but that's so you can come to find out many Reform writings on spiritual meaning, on women are allowed to put tefillin, on echo tefillin, how is tefillin. You would find it really difficult to find a video of Reform movement that just shows how to do it. Practical. Okay, so you've got convinced, you want to put tefillin, you want to try, you want to learn. Go online and try to find something Reform. There are, but very few. Go to find something with a woman putting tefillin and teaching how to put it. Even less. Things like that. So we can talk a lot about values, how we should be fair and ethical in work. Okay, so you're convinced. You do see these values as very important. Now you want to practice. You want to see suggestions of agreement, suggestions of partnership papers, things that you can take in your business. You want to practice, and that's what actually Shulchan Aruch is. That's more practical part of the discussion, not only theoretical, but you know. Okay, now I want to do Netilat Yadayim. I want to wash my hands in the morning. What's the traditional way to do it? Go find Reform Reform video on that, or any detailed descriptions. Not talking about how spiritual it is and how wonderful it is and what values are behind that. That's also that's important. That's where. But how do I do this? That part we are lacking. And that part, I think, we would benefit. And if you want to find, you will eventually find yourself looking through the Chabad videos or Eshet Torah, or like. So I would like to have that balance between spiritual, intellectual, emotional discussions, and being able, if the decision is to practice this in such and such form, to see how do we do it? How do we do it? We want to have we want to have a certain type of activity, of religious activity, religious practice at home. How do we practically do it? So you can find many movies and materials how to do engaging Seder Pesach. How to make it short, how to make it this, can you find a traditional Seder Pesach? No. So I think that's what we are missing. It can be traditional Reform. It can be egalitarian, it can mention Miriam, it can mention all the Reforms additions, but do we have the full traditional version in our Reform eyes? So that's where I feel that we are missing. We have some more questions, I think, right?
Yeah, so we have one from Catherine. How do you write something like this for people who regularly say we're Reform and we do what we want? Okay, so I think that's...
Okay, so I'll give you a harsh answer because I'm not your rabbi. I will click the button at the end of the meeting, and I will stay here in Jerusalem, and I will leave Gila to take up from that. I would say that people are not good Reform Jews. Being Reform and saying that, like, they're consumers. That's not a Reform statement. Now I'll make it a little bit lukewarm. I think that you can see in every denomination people who are religious and people who are that denomination thinking. What I mean. So you have religious Orthodox Jews who are practicing what they think the true Judaism. But you have many secular people who don't practice anything, who are actually doing what they want. But if they ask them what the true form of Judaism or how should Judaism be practiced, they would say, oh, you're Reform, you're doing trifles. The good thing is the Orthodox. So I think inside the Reform movement, we also have people who are religious committed Jews, who are, their religious commitment is Reform. And we have also secular people who are not really practicing much, but when they want something religious, when they want bar mitzvah, when they want bat mitzvah, especially when they want some ceremony, they will come to the Reform congregation because in their thinking that the form of Judaism that is right. Somebody who says that he is in the Reform movement just because it allows under that diversity not doing anything Jewish, I don't know. I think Judaism in any form is first of all a commitment. Why would you need to call yourself a Reform? You can be just Jew or not Jew or just a person. If you take an effort to be somewhere, I think it's a sign about commitment to something. Whatever in your definition, if you are using Reform to say that you are less, it's just a pity. I mean, less in the sense like when you say somebody is very Orthodox or very conservative, you mean that that person is very committed and very involved. When you say somebody is very Reform, you normally mean that he or she is not really into things. So if a person uses the Reform title in that sense to be less, I think it's just chaval, it's just a pity. And there is, so everybody is welcome, but it's not the Reform Judaism. Reform Judaism is about commitment. It's about doing things our own way. It's a commitment to study, it's a commitment to the values, to the Torah, to living our values in everyday life. So if that's something what you want, you're in the right place. But if what you want doing nothing, it's not the place probably.
I think we will take, there's one more question or comment from Lauren because we need to start wrapping up here. Lauren, would you like to say something about what you commented on here? And then we'll let Rabbi Alona answer. Okay, Lauren's disappeared. She was here a moment ago. And so I'll say what she was. Oh, Lauren, you're on mute. Very much on mute.
I will try if I understand your question. If not, just try me maybe like direct me to your question if I'm not. I think yes. I think that classical Shulchan Aruch probably is not what we are looking for.
Yeah, that was the idea, exactly.
I think that we are looking for Shulchan Aruch in terms that we want something encompassing. We don't want to reduce our synagogue and our study and our Judaism just to the Beit Knesset, just to the synagogue. We want to live it to its fullness, to its richness, to all the opportunities it provides to us, for our own benefit and for the benefit of the society, for the benefit of the world. So Shulchan Aruch in terms that make it all the spheres of our life. Not what halacha has to do with that. No, being Jewish has to do with everything. If you are Jewish, it's all your life, every moment of your life. And yes, Shulchan Aruch, not in that stereotypical way that it's just, because if you go through Shulchan Aruch, you can see that it's actually in people's mind is very brief and very yes or no. Even Shulchan Aruch itself, it's more explanatory. But also going back to Rabbi Yosef Karo, what we saw in the beginning, he thought that you can't replace Shulchan Aruch. You can't replace Beit Yosef by Shulchan Aruch. When you're really in a hurry, you pick Shulchan Aruch and then you use it. But after that, when you have time, you go to Beit Yosef, you open it and you study. You really you really know your stuff. It's not just like, you know, when you have a funeral and so you have a manual.
What to do
you
right
open now. Something like that, or but I think that life changes, and with the circumstances, maybe we have less and less very urgent situations, and the real urgent situations are really different from what Rabbi Yosef Karo had. So we need to think, what are the spheres in our life? When we do want something, I don't know, like think about your life. When do you think you have situations when you need something like on the spot? And it would be an interesting discussion for which situations we need something much like Shulchan Aruch, and for which situation we want response. We want real in-depth study, looking through all the text and get into our personal and congregational decision that's our halacha, that's our way of being Jewish, and that's on the other issue.
And I find that really interesting as a thought experiment, because I feel like if we expanded on that even farther and kind of went down that rabbit hole, we'd probably find there's a lot less things that are absolutely urgent than we like to think.
Yeah, I would urge you to do so in terms like, I really think it's first of all unique to a person, because yeah, we do have a lot in common, but each of us live in very unique circumstances. First of all, emotionally, right? And then each congregation is very unique. It's a unique combination of people. And then the county-wise, I think they're much unique. So we can all study and share. But yes, we are very, very different. And that thinking, what's urgent for us these days? And maybe in retrospective, you would be able to see that 10 years, 20 years after that, how that, where the urgency is now, how it changes. So I do think that that type of a discussion could be beneficial for all of us on personal level, on congregational level, on peoplehood level.
Just to close, so thank you very much. Just one thing to kind of add as a question for us that we don't need to answer now, but and thank you for this, Lauren, for this distinction between the Bet Yosef and Shulchan Aruch relating to what are we looking for, is would we as people today in the world that we live in, would we accept a short answer? Would we accept an answer from somebody who isn't ourselves? Like if you told me, if Rabbi Alona told me, if I had a question, should I fly somewhere? I know I shouldn't. Should I fly somewhere on environmental questions? And you told me no, would I still not fly? Okay.
I have a very easy answer for that, Gila. I think the moment you ask somebody, you already want that person answer. You don't go to any rabbi. And that is Orthodox democracy. You have to follow your rabbi. you can pick your own rabbi. You can't go to 2 rabbis. You can't change your rabbis. But you have that right to pick your. And I think just think about your private life. When you want to share something, you have kind of a social circle, you have your friends, so that story you tell to that friend, and that's, like, you know, you share what with whom depends on. So I do believe that if you ask a certain person, you ask because you want that person answer. Maybe you sometimes ask not to follow that. And that's also something I believe it's usually something we do conscious. But we while asking, we definitely nowadays we don't ask everybody. Mm-hmm. We are very careful about what we share with whom and whom we ask. And that's why I actually urge my students, and I urge the rabbis, and I urge everybody, don't be shy giving your answers. In modern world, there is no danger that somebody would actually do exactly what you said. But there is no such danger. But people do want opinion. People, I think we are all kind of a little tired of, you know, oh, that and this and everything, and like, what's your opinion? It's yours. You don't need to introduce, in my eyes, like, it's obvious. If you are saying that, it's your opinion, just give it and just trust people to do what they want.
Okay, thank you. That was a very good answer. Okay, so so again, Rabbi Alona, thank you so much for joining us today, for sharing some of your knowledge on this, and for opening up very interesting questions. So I sent the article to people. If somebody has not received the article and you want, please email me and I will send it again. And toda rabba. Toda. Have a good week. Shavua tov. It's already Shavua tov over in Israel. And have a Shabbat shalom to everybody here. Thank you. Toda rabba.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to meet you all. Bye-bye.
Bye. להתראות.